Alright, this will be part 2. On this one we're going to actually put everything back together. I went ahead and laid everything all out, so we got it all set up. And this is all of the engine parts. Everything cleaned up real good. This is the underside of the button head now. Definitely looks a lot better than what it did in the previous video when we pulled it all apart. The underside of the cooling head cleaned up. Engine spins a lot better than what it was. It'll actually spin a couple rotations now when you stop, when you're not spinning it. Did remove the copper gaskets while cleaning. This one actually has 2 of them on there. I guess you could call them copper gasket, copper shims. So we're going to go ahead and put everything back together. It's not that hard. It's pretty much just reverse the process of taking it apart. We're going to start off by putting the back plate on. On this one, back plate's got a small little cutout, and it'll go towards the top where the muffler goes. It just helps give everything good clearance. You'll just push the back plate on, line up the 4 holes, and just stick in the 4 screws. The way I tend to do mine is I don't tighten up one screw all the way and put in another screw. What I like to do is just tighten up, put in one screw, and snug it up on one corner just till you feel it kind of touch. And once I feel that happen, I'll get another one, go to the opposite corner, do the same thing with it. Once you feel it touch, then go to another corner. It's kind of like when you change a tire on a car. You don't stick one lug nut on and ratchet it all the way down. You put it on and put on more, put on the opposite corner and go in a star pattern. And once you get them all down, then I'll go ahead and go to the corners and give it a little bit of, make it a little more tighter, and just go back and forth, tighten each one up a little bit at a time. We're not looking for King Kong tight, just make it, snug. Now, I'm not going to put the pull start on yet. We're going to probably do the pull start last. Next is going to be the carburetor. Now on mine, my carburetor sat with the throttle linkage facing off to the left of the motor, and all this facing up to the right. So all you're going to do is you just stick the carburetor in. Now, if you watched the first video, we had talked about I was going to change the orientation of where the fuel line comes in, and we did do that on this one. I moved it facing off to the 1 o'clock. I may still end up bringing it back this direction. I don't know yet, because I'm going to have to run a little more fuel line because of the way I'm going to put a fuel filter and a fuel cooler on it. So we're going to leave it right there for time being, and we're going to straighten it out a little bit more, but that'll definitely give me a lot better angle than what I had with it wrapping behind the carburetor and touching the coolant head. So we're going to try that for time being. And once you get the carburetor set in place, all you do is make sure you take the threaded side. So we're going to make sure I have the threaded one. This is the threaded side of that little half moon slug. Half moon's going to face in towards the carburetor. You just stick it in, and it should set flush with the body. And stick in the other side, that's the non-threaded, with the half moon facing into the carb. You'll just have to turn it a little bit. Once they sit flush, you just put in the screw. Go ahead and tighten it in tighten it in a little bit by hand, and grab your Allen wrench, and you can go ahead and tighten it up. And what happens is, as you tighten it, it'll pull it in and it'll twist it up, which will lock the carb in place. Now, this is another thing, you don't have to go gorilla tight, because you will break, especially like some of these that are just full plastic carbs. You know, if it's a solid aluminum carb, it's not, you don't have quite as much to worry about. These plastic body carbs, you definitely don't want to break one of these because that's going to ruin the carb. And you just kind of check and make sure it's on there good and tight. This one is on there good and tight, so we ain't got nothing to worry about. Next thing we're going to do is go ahead and put the head on. Now the way I do the heads is, of course, make sure, like I said in the first video, you definitely want to have this copper gasket on there. We're going to get the cleanest side of the gasket facing down. These gaskets don't have any cracks or splits or pinches or anything, so I don't see any reason not to rerun these. The way I do mine is I put the button head on, get the 4 screws lined up, and the way I find, the easiest thing I find is to go ahead and put the screws in the cooling head first. Get all 4 of them put in, or at least 2 of them in opposite corners. We'll just go ahead and do 2 in opposite corners. And as you can see, they'll stick out the bottom of it. And it don't matter what direction you put the head on, long enough you have 2 of them in there. So stick the 2 screws down in the hole, and we're just going to give it a few turns. Don't tighten these all the way up yet, and I'll show you why here in a second. Once you get them tightened up a little bit, lift up the head, and that way you can see to find the other 2 holes, because you still got 2 to 3 more screws depending on your application. So if you can't get one to start, you can actually lift up the head some and be able to see where that hole is, so you know what direction to move that screw. Normally once you get at least 2 of them started, the other ones will go right in place. So now that we got all of them in, we're going to treat it the same way that we did the back. You're just going to screw it till you feel a little bit of resistance. Go to the opposite corner, screw that one down. Once you feel a little bit of resistance, you're going to stop, go to the next. Go to the other corner. And once you get them all snugged, then you can go and start tightening them down. I still tighten them down into a star pattern because you want to pull this head down evenly. You don't want it to be crooked or anything, you know, bent. So best thing to do is just work your way in a star pattern. Then once you get it torqued most of the way down, then you can go ahead and go back and tighten them up the way they need to be tightened. And that gets the cooling head on. Then you want to look around. You can see right here is the seam between the cooling head and the top of the block. So you just want to look and make sure that looks pretty even all the way around. I have seen them where they get put back together and something happens, they'll torque down one side and it'll bend the head to the, it'll bend that head downwards. So then it don't get a good seal. It's not sitting level. It won't run, it won't run right because it doesn't have, good compression, stuff like that. And part of the job of this, why it's called the cooling head, is it helps pull all the heat from up here, from down here into this. So you definitely want as much of it touching as you can get. So we'll go ahead and put pull start on. Pull start's the same thing as the back plate. It's got a little cutout at the top right here by my finger. And it matches that one. One-way bearing. As you see on the one-way bearing, it's got a section that's got the flat sides, like a bolt does, and then you got the smooth side. The smooth side on this one goes towards the crank, so it'll set like that. And you put the pull start on, match up the 4 holes on the back of it, and put the screws in. I find it easiest to put the screw on the Allen head first. Once you get the first one in, it makes things a lot easier. And stick it in and then just screw it in place. these you can go ahead and tighten down the first one all the way. These don't have any issues with, you know, getting off-centered or anything like that, so it don't make a difference. You can go ahead and stick the first one in and tighten it all the way down and then go to the next one. No specific order. Now if you are one of those that changes it out and has, you know, an aluminum pull start or anything like that, you may want to do a star pattern. I know not everybody's going to have a pull start. You know, some of y'all may have a Traxxas Easy Start or some form of electric start on it. It's pretty much the same thing. You've got 3 to 4 screws that's going to hold the whole housing of the electric start on, and you're just going to pull that off, which will give you weight to the back plate. If I remember correctly, I think the Traxxas Easy Starts only have 3 screws. It's been a while since I messed with Traxxas. I've pretty much got away from Traxxas now. Now I run other manufacturers. No real specific reason, just preference. You'll get everything tightened up. So get the pull start back on, or electric start, whatever you have for a starting system. Now, while I had mine apart, there's a pin that goes between the crank and that piece that goes through the back plate. And I probably should have showed this earlier. My pin had a real bad crack in it, so I went ahead and pulled that pin out, and I've ordered the new starting pin and spring. So on mine right now, even though it's all put back together, when I pull the pull start, it doesn't have that mechanical connection between the pull start and the crank to spin everything over. But I can spin it by the flywheel, and it will spin like it needs to. You can actually hear the compression on this one when it comes up. You can hear a little pop. So I went ahead and ordered the new piece to just go ahead and fix that. Pull start won't activate the motor. Yours should be fine. Only thing that's left to do is just stick on this silicone sleeve. It'll go on the back of the motor like that. Put the muffler on. You get that one spring. Muffler's gonna sit like this. You're just gonna wrap the spring back around the motor, stick the spring back in, and you'll be good to go. I'm gonna leave the muffler off for time being because I'm thinking about replacing the muffler anyways. So that'll be the end of part 2. Let me know what y'all want to see on part 3.